As a military town, San Diego may have more personal reasons to regret what's happening in Iraq right now than some other places in the United States. Many families have seen loved ones lose limbs and perhaps lives in the effort to stabilize that country. Here to help us understand what's going on and glimpse the conversations going on in the military community are Rick Epps, who is Professor of Political Science and Public Administration at San Diego State University. His focus is on Middle East politics and international security. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
We also have with Veterans for Peace, Barry Ladendorf. Thank you so much for being with us, Barry.
You're welcome.
So let me start with you. The U.S. withdrew its troops 2.5 years ago. Does it surprise you that the situation has broken down so fast, or are you surprised it didn't break down earlier?
Sadly, the latter. I hate being right about this. I had predicted that it would actually devolve, and as soon as we would leave, that you would have all these factions that would then be vying for power. You'd have a political vacuum, and that would be the result. And sadly enough, it's the seeds of this were sown in 2003 when we debathified the country. We killed the government infrastructure, and we disbanded the military. And this is the result of a 10-year or an 8-year effort that has now led to the last 2 years of complete civil war and chaos.
But are you surprised at the way that it's happened with the small groups of ISIS coming in?
Not so much. Well, ISIL, yes, in terms of how fast it's moved, and the fact that the Sunni faction within the country has moved toward this Al-Qaeda-based faction. So that part happened very surprisingly and very quickly. But just also how fast the military has capitulated in that country. And they're only at 40 miles from Baghdad right now. And I think that we've got a big problem facing us right now because of that.
Now, Barry, do you have friends who fought in Iraq?
Yes, we have a number of younger veterans who fought in Iraq and Afghanistan who are members of Veterans for Peace. So yeah, we hear their experiences.
So, I mean, many people sacrificed a lot in order to stabilize that country. And there are some, I think, who are saying, let's go back in and take back Fallujah, for example. What is your reaction to that?
Well, my reaction, the reaction of Veterans for Peace, is that we would oppose going back in there. We were in that conflict for 9 or 10 years. And the military solution is not the solution. What we need is what President Obama said today, and that is diplomacy. That's the only way that we're going to resolve this thing, is through diplomacy. And unfortunately, the Maliki government, I believe, has to bear a great responsibility for what has happened. They purged the government of the Sunnis when the United States left. Many of the military officers were Sunnis. They were purged out of the government. And so you had a lack of leadership, a vacuum of leadership there. And that was one of the problems that caused these Iraq army to just cut and run, and that's exactly what they did. And so, but what I was saying is that I think that the diplomacy is the way that we have to go. Sending more troops back in there is not going to resolve it, because at the end of the day, the people in Iraq want to decide their fate, not what the United States government wants or what other people want. So if we can facilitate democracy, if we can facilitate diplomacy, that's what we want to do.
But Rick, do you think the United States could have done more politically in the last 2.5 years to prevent this from happening?
Well, I think they tried to let the Iraqis have as much freedom as they could and freedom of choice. However, I would argue if you look at the historical legacy of Iraq, or even in the region in general, it was pretty much a pie-in-the-sky reality, partially because, when you look at it, Maliki, who was a Shiite, if you would, who, and you had, before it was a Sunni government, Sunni-run government with Saddam Hussein, that now takes over. He represses all the other groups that had once been a huge part of what the country was about. And now, so now you have an infrastructure where it now looks like Iran is our closest ally, because Iran does not want to see ISIL come to fruition and see this Islamic terrorist state, which Iraq may happen to become if we're not very careful.
But it was interesting how the president today kind of warned Iran, didn't he, about, think really carefully before you take any action. Yeah, well, I mean, but even in our, and I give the president credit, he said what he needed to say. However, I think it's a little preemptive to suggest that we may not, that we may have to bite off a bigger chunk of this. And as I said, part of this is because of the reality. Can we, and here's the tough question that we have to answer. Can we afford to have an active terrorist state under the guise of former Al-Qaeda or an Al-Qaeda affiliate take over the country as oil-rich as Iraq,
with the resources then, financial resources, to then perpetuate and develop into even a greater threat. Can we afford that? And that's not an easy answer. And I'm with Barry. I'm on the peace side of the issue, but I'm also the reality of how we're going to get there is going to be very problematic.
Okay, this is just the beginning of a very difficult situation. So thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming in and helping us understand it. That's Rick Epp of SDSU and Barry Leidendorf of Veterans for Peace.